The word of the year 2022, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, was gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of manipulation using psychological methods to make someone question their own reality. The term comes from a 1938 play titled Gaslight, where the husband attempts to make his wife believe that she is going insane, so he can commit her to a mental institution and steal her inheritance. Even though his end result is diabolical, what he does is actually very simple and small. He dims the lights every night, and when his wife claims that the lights are dimmed, he insists that they are not and tells her that she's crazy for thinking so. Gaslighting can happen in any relationship where there is a power dynamic. It mostly happens in personal relationships, but it also happens in professional relationships. While in the former we are inclined to believe our loved one, in the latter we might want to believe our boss or our colleague, but it could be harder to do so if what they tell us continuously conflict with our own beliefs and our own reality. Otherwise said, it might be easier to tell when someone is trying to gaslight us in the workplace. A more complete definition of gaslighting is a psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories, that typically leads to confusion, loss of confidence and self-esteem, uncertainty of one's emotional or mental stability, and a dependency on the perpetrator. Gaslighting is a covert type of emotional abuse, and as such it usually starts with seemingly small offenses and in very subtle ways, which also makes it hard to detect, but over time all those seemingly small offenses can snowball. Gaslighting is not lying. All gaslighting is lying, but not all lying is gaslighting. Lying is hiding the truth, and although it's not commendable, it does not involve manipulation like gaslighting does. There is a hidden agenda behind gaslighting, and that is to make the gaslightee doubt themselves and gain control over them or over the situation. Some people gaslight with a clear malicious intent. Others may gaslight without even realizing it. For example, if someone was raised by their parents with very clear-cut beliefs, then they too will see the world in a certain way, and they will think that everyone else that sees things differently, there is something wrong with them. However, the term is used for those who are aware that they're gaslighting. Gaslighters usually get defensive when challenged. When this happens, they try to manipulate the other into believing that they are at fault. They might say something like, "You're just too sensitive," or "I didn't mean it in that way," or that's not what I said," or "I'm just joking." Gaslighters share some common characteristics. They are manipulative, they're controlling, they have insecurities, which they try to cover up by pointing out other people's flaws, they have narcissistic tendencies, and they have low self-esteem. Let's first see some examples of gaslighting in the workplace. One typical technique of gaslighters is using something that is true and that we are particularly sensitive about. For example, we might be having issues in our personal life that we're worried about, and a colleague of ours has come to know of it, either from us directly or they overheard. They may try to gaslight us by saying that we're not performing at work because of these issues that we're having. In this case, we are worried about our issues, and deep down, we might even suspect that they may be impacting negatively our performance at work. But that does not mean that that's actually true. But because we are sensitive about it, our colleague uses this information to make us doubt ourselves and maybe even believe them. Gaslighting happens when someone pretends to have forgotten something that actually happened. For example, if our boss has agreed to give us a raise, but when after some time of them not doing anything about it, we bring it up, they deny having agreed to it. Gaslighting is also when someone trivializes our needs or feelings. For example, our boss may call us hypersensitive for bringing up some inappropriate remark or behavior. Similarly, they may question our memory of the remark or behavior, which makes us question ourselves and may even lead to us feeling like an imposter. The gaslighter may misremember something past and, for example, tell us that they never got the report that we actually delivered. Even though we are sure to have delivered it, when they become adamant that they never received it, we try to make sense of what might have happened. Another scenario might be someone who might try to seem like they're trying to help. They might say something like, "Don't take this the wrong way, I'm only trying to help, but..." And they'll carry on with saying something insulting, either about us or our work. Some might gaslight us by firstly excluding us from meetings, projects, gathering, or conversations, and then after we ask about why we weren't included, they make us feel like we're overreacting or that we just somehow didn't get the memo. These are only a few examples of gaslighting at work. There are so many other ways that gaslighting happens. What helps us identify when gaslighting is happening in our workplace is learning to recognize its patterns. There are 3 components to gaslighting. The first component is obvious lies. For example, a report that we know we've delivered, an email we know we did not get, a remark we know is not helpful. The gaslighter typically lies about similar things. The second component is time. If someone in the workplace does any of the above once or twice, that's not gaslighting. That's just, well, humans being humans. The third component of gaslighting is positive reinforcement. Gaslighters realize that if they're always gaslighting others, they will be able to tell at one point. That is why they include the occasional positive reinforcement to keep others confused. For instance, if our boss keeps undermining our work when we're almost fed up with the situation, they will find the moment to praise our work in front of other colleagues. This is what causes the massive confusion that gaslighting tends to generate in the gaslightee. So what are some signs that tell us that someone is gaslighting us in the workplace? We hear negative, untrue gossip about us. We notice someone telling obvious lies. We are constantly second-guessing ourselves. We're ruminating about a perceived character flaw of ours. We are often excluded from anything. We feel confused in our thoughts, beliefs, or feelings. We find ourselves always apologizing to others. We find ourselves in an unexpected argument. We find ourselves saying the same thing over and over again. And finally, we realize that something is wrong in our relationship with them, but just don't know what. Gaslighting in the workplace creates the opposite of a psychological safe environment, needless to say. Many people, as a result of gaslighting, change their perceptions in order to avoid having a conflict. Gaslighting and other forms of harassment in the workplace are underreported because the nature of gaslighting is such that the gaslightee does not identify the gaslighting as such, or may downplay it, or even blame themselves for it. So how do we counter gaslighting in the workplace? As gaslighting is a manipulative behavior, the main reason behind it is the need or desire for control. Gaslighters want to have control either over the situation or over the gaslightee. So what we should do to counter gaslighting is take back control. First, identify the problem. The first thing to do is recognize the problem. If we don't know of gaslighting, we are not able to identify the manipulations as such. Once we know what it is, and when it happens, we can start to address it. If there is a particular person that we doubt is gaslighting us, we could write down the instances of possible gaslighting and come back to them when we're no longer in the heat of the moment. This makes it easier to realize whether they really are trying to gaslight us or not. Second, validate your reality. The worst part of gaslighting is that it makes us doubt our reality, our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings. This is also one of the reasons why we should be the first ones to validate our own reality. But especially when someone else is trying to gaslight us by questioning our beliefs or calling us too sensitive, we should try even harder to acknowledge our beliefs and feelings and actually believe in them and feel our feelings and not depend on others to validate them. Third, make decisions that won't hurt you. It is usually not possible to just stop all interactions with someone in the workplace. So when someone is trying to gaslight us at work, we should focus on other things that we could do to limit our interactions with them. We might limit our conversations to only 1 or 2 a day. We might interact with them only when there are other people around us, so that their focus does not fall entirely on us, and that if they try to gaslight us, other people can notice it too. When we do have to talk with them, we could make only idle conversation and focus our conversations on work. What we should not do is get into heated discussions with a gaslighter, nor should we fall prey to their intentional jokes or comments, and we should not apologize for having a particular opinion or for feeling a certain way. We could go for expressions like, we'll have to agree to disagree. The bottom line is we should stay calm and not react in any emotional way, because it is our emotional reaction that feeds their gaslighting. Fourth, get a second opinion. When we are not sure whether someone at work is trying to gaslight us or not, we can discuss it with someone else that we have a good relationship with. It could be someone at work, a colleague, or out of work. When we try to interact with the gaslighter only when there are other colleagues around, if the gaslighter gaslights us, some of our colleagues might notice it. Talking with them about the gaslight and the gaslighter helps to give extra validation to our reality and might help down the line if things get worse. Fifth, don't confront them. When confronted about their manipulative ways, the gaslighter typically denies any mistreatment. They may become dismissive or even defensive and aggressive and accuse us of gaslighting. Even if we were to show them evidence of their gaslighting, it is very unlikely that they will admit to it. They will find a way to deny, minimize, deflect, and maybe even manipulate some more. So we should never confront the gaslighter with the fact that they are gaslighting. And finally, sixth, decide how much you can accept. When things get bad, and even the simplest interaction with a gaslighter in the office becomes extremely draining, we could take more drastic measures. Or when someone's gaslighting can potentially hurt us in our job, we might have to react. One very straightforward thing to do is keep records of our interactions, which means that we will need to keep most of our interactions written. We could decide to interact with the gaslighter only for work, and if they are the kind of person who always gets in your face, then we could consider talking to them about only getting together for work. We could say something like, look, you and I don't usually see eye to eye, but we are at work and we have to work together well, so I suggest that we only get together for work and we limit our conversations to work-related issues only. This might not come easy to say, but I think it's the healthiest conversation that we could have with someone who is trying to gaslight us or just manipulate us in any way possible without actually having to tell them that we've figured them out and that we will not fall prey to their manipulations. The next thing to do is bring it up with someone higher up or the human resources department. But even if we've documented everything, when we end up bringing it up with higher ups or HR, even with all the possible documentation, it might be hard to prove that we are being gaslighted or manipulated. Some might say it's not intentional. Some might brush it off as something minuscule, and others might just side with the gaslighter. Filing a complaint is, however, necessary to do and might be helpful. The next recourse is getting an employment lawyer involved, and the last recourse, sadly, is looking for a new job. If it is our boss who is gaslighting us, it's almost impossible to thrive at a job when our boss is constantly undermining our accomplishments and blocking growth opportunities for us. The ideal solution is to leave, but when that's not possible, we might, for example, look into other positions in other departments of the same company. Gaslighting is very detrimental to our well-being. While there may be a lot of people who completely ignore it, its negative impact is undeniable. Learning how to tell when someone is gaslighting, learning the signs that we should look for in ourselves as a possible gaslightee, and what to do when such a manipulation is in fact taking place in our workplace is very important to protect our mental and emotional well-being. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.